What would you do if you were to start your own ski instructor certifying organization? Would you do things differently from others? In today's modern world, would you do things different from what were done in the past? How would you compare yourself to others in the industry? And is everything up to date with this modern world? Well, Canada has a new ski instructor certifying body, the PSIC, Professional Ski Instructors of Canada. And I sat down and had a great chat with three of those people that are involved. Jeff Marks and Mark Sedgwick, who are co-founders of the PSIC, and then Guy Hetherington from All Tracks Ski Academy in Whistler, who's one of the head trainers and very much involved in how the curriculum has been set out and how they do it. I found this conversation really interesting because these people get to start afresh. They get to take a look at the state of skiing and instructing at the moment and say, hey, do we want to change anything? Is there anything that we need to do differently? And I think that's very unique. It's very hard to change something once it's already sort of in place. If your certifying country has deep roots in how things are taught, then change can be often quite difficult.
The term is the free marketplace of ideas. You want ideas to bubble up. And just, it doesn't matter where they come from, because I'm a level 4 examiner and you're not, should not enter into that equation. And if we can continue to propagate that philosophy, it will empower people. It will give them the freedom to think. And the freedom to think is what people need as they're developing. You stifle that and you're not doing them a service at all.
I find it fascinating that Canada gets to start over again. In this conversation, I think you're going to walk away with a bunch of really interesting insights for people who, say, start their own businesses, are in the ski instructor world, have had lessons. I think everybody who's out there has been involved in the ski industry is going to have something really cool to take away. My favorite part, as always, is when we get a little bit ski nerdy.
Listen to everybody's smiling, right? Like we're all we're all like actually emotionally involved in Guy's description of what he's working on in his skiing, which is awesome.
Stay tuned partway through for that. If seeing things from another perspective is how you like to view learning a sport, then I'd also invite you to check out Big Picture Skiing. You'll notice the guys reference what I'm doing in Big Picture Skiing a few times in this conversation, and this is my opportunity, this is my way of starting afresh, starting over again, and doing things the way I like to do it. It's not for everybody, of course, but it's a fantastic resource. There are people all over the world improving their skiing and learning through the Big Picture Skiing website. So please go check that out if you haven't. There's a 7-day free trial, so you can do it risk-free. Okay, let's get into this podcast episode with the PSIC. I think you're going to really enjoy it. So you guys are in a unique position in that you can start over again with a ski instructor certifying body and training body. What is different? What's changed if someone came from another association and they joined the PSIC? How would you guys say, like, what are the biggest differences?
Well, I think how we identify ourselves, and we spent a lot of time, and it really, when we started from scratch, it was, culture, industry alignment, and the adventure is what would represent the identity of the PSIC. And we can kind of get into kind of what defines those pieces, but ultimately, culture, community is everything to us. So our community will define us as we go on. So, we believe kind of diversity and inclusion makes us stronger, not just for this organization, but, society in general. And then with the industry alignment, it was making sure that what we were building was relevant to a modern day ski school. So it kind of represents the skills and competencies for today's environment. The loudest message in there was that teaching is so much more than improving technique, and it should represent the entire skiing experience, and that, we want to bring those people back and make them lifelong skiers, and, instill the love of the sport. And from that, we went on to create this thing called the adventure, which really is central to our philosophy on everything that we've done from that point. So I think that's kind of the very quick synopsis of what we've done with the ability to start from scratch. That's our identity, but there's a lot in there. So, Jeff and Guy, I'll give you an opportunity that I've kind of put the headlines in there if you've got anything to kind of flesh out on that front.
The thing that first stands out to me, I was looking on the PSIC website and there is a tab that you can click on about, and then steering committee. And I was just looking through those names and kind of reading a bit about people, and there are a lot of snow sports directors from different places in Canada, and it's very visible to see who they are. And I'm not sure, was this similar is this similar in other associations? Because it sounds like, well, this sounds different to me in terms of you've probably gone and approached the ski school directors and saying, what do you guys need to deliver a better product, instead of like, we're giving you this whether you like it or not.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And not to jump in if the others had to say, but we have, it's, it's at least a dozen deep now, and it's representatives from either resort owners or ski school directors. So, and we go right from Vancouver Island, kind of Mount Washington, which is on, the very west coast, and all the way over. And Canada's as wide, if not wider than Australia, Tom. So as you know, so all the way over to Nova Scotia. So we're represented kind of across the entire country with that body. And that's exactly it. They keep us accountable. They govern us. And that's how we know we're delivering what the industry needs, because it's actually the industry telling us. So yeah, thank you for jumping on the website and having a look at that, because that is how, the industry alignment, it's a collaboration. And we have our meetings, and we show them our materials, and they give us feedback, and we've got a bunch of tasks, and we go on and build the competencies. Our job is to, our expertise is to build competencies and skills in professionals, and their expertise is understanding what competencies they want in their employees. So,
yeah.
So it's a
Jeff,
kind of a good dynamic.
What did some of the steering committee come to you requesting that's maybe different?
Well, I mean, a lot of that is actually what is in our level 1 and 2. And like Mark said, thanks for checking out the website. Like, when you go in there, if you poke around a little bit, you'll find, overviews of our level 1 through level 4, including our LPT course and so on. And, you've probably seen our write-ups on the adventure and how that exists in our system. And that, I think, is probably a highlight there is, how do we create something for a ski pro that isn't just a way of teaching, but it actually also kind of draws them in. And that's where our, we started with the concept of skier experience. And as we talked and got a little bit more creative with it, it became the adventure. And we got pretty excited about it as we talked. And we took that idea to the steering committee and kind of said, well, here's what we're thinking, in order to get more people in the door. Because ultimately that's what we want to do, is we want to grow, both from the end user, the participant side in Canada, to participation in snow schools and instructors and so on. And so, we've done a lot of back and forth with the committee, and that's where we landed was with the adventure. Is it's more than just lesson structure, more than just guest experience, which obviously is a commonly used thing, but we felt we could amplify it a little bit with the concept of adventure. Everything that we do is adventure. And then we were kind of like, okay, well, what does that mean? Well, it means that it's got to be fun, and it's got to be safe, and it's got to produce learning. And then it just kind of all snowballed from there and grew. And the committee, is all over it, and it's driven a lot of our conversations as well. So they've fed it, and we've come back. Like Mark said, they're kind of our, they're our vetting process. They're our compass to help us, do the right things.
Great. And Guy, what would you say, from your experience of the PSIC so far, if someone asked you what's different, if they came in and did a course, like say the level 1 course compared to another level 1 course they may have done, could you highlight some key differences?
Yeah, I mean, just reflecting on what Mark was saying there, the idea of putting sort of this idea of inclusiveness front and center includes, sort of dissolving the traditional ideas of sort of hierarchy in particular. And we've sort of formalized this term, giving people license to think. And we want that philosophy to trickle down so that a level 1 candidate is going to feel like they have license to think and to get involved in the thought process. And, we just feel when we do dissolve the sort of hierarchical nature that's typically existed in the industry, it just allows people to blossom from a much younger stage of their development, if that makes sense. And, as much as we're being guided by, the industry steering committee, I think a free marketplace of ideas, allowing good ideas to bubble up from anywhere, and the philosophy that surrounds that attitude is something that will make us stronger. And I think it's something that level 1 candidates are going to feel from the way their course conductors approach the level 1 in and of itself. So, yeah, I would say that this idea of being inclusive includes that as a philosophy, and that is something that is felt very, very strongly and very strenuously by the people who have taken the level 1 so far. So yeah, that's just one point to consider there.
I'm a real tangible person. Like, could you? Because I've run level 1 courses in Australia, that sort of stuff. Can you give me an example of this non-hierarchical nature in the level 1 PSIC? Is there something that's actually an example in a day?
Yeah, well, I would say to start with, just an attitude from the course conductor that is obviously very friendly and very open, and that encourages discourse without judgment, and without any sort of shame attached to it. So, I think more than, a single example, it's something that's felt by everybody based on the attitude of the course conductor and that the way they conduct themselves in front of the group. I don't know if you guys have anything to add there in terms of specific examples, but.
Yeah, a little bit. And kind of, when Tom first asked the question, it's, what identifies the PSIC, and then brought in the lens of, well, what would one of the participants or the members think and feel if you ask them from that perspective. And what I've heard from them, so if they're answering the question, and this is a bit broad brush, but oh wow, when they go through the training courses and through the evaluations, this is like I ski, and when I teach, when I'm at my best. It's not, we don't have set ski off maneuvers. We can get into this, Tom, with the training and with the evaluations. It's the mountain guides us at each of our levels, right? It's a range of skiing that we're looking at. And when they teach, it's not, if I go as far as say, they're not out there trying to give a canned lesson because that's what they feel the examiners need to check off as they go through their list. It's representative of the fun aspects of connecting with the guest and celebrating the milestones and exploration and terrain play. It's a bunch of the safety principles, and safety isn't just about keeping someone from hurting themselves physically, but it's that psychological safety. So it's all of those aspects that they do out there, or we do as professionals every day when you're at your best teaching or skiing, that we have put a lot of effort into making sure our courses and evaluations represent that. So when we go back and say, the adventure really is central to our culture, we've embodied it even in the training and in the evaluation. So for example, with the hierarchy, there's not one case in a PSIC exam right through from level 1 to level 4 where typically you'll have a bunch of candidates standing at the top, kind of with or without a number, getting cold, and they'll have a single run that's pretty consequential, like 1 or 2 runs that define a season of training, with a number of folks at the bottom with clipboards. There's a hierarchy, there's a judgment. That doesn't happen. That we have other mechanisms, and they take a little longer, but it better represents what the industry is looking for in their performance when they're out there skiing and teaching. So there's a couple of examples that have been cleanly illustrated to me over and over and over with our members as they've been going through some of our initial courses.
Okay, so say if I'm Tom Gellie, director of Big Picture Skiing on the Internet Ski School, and I want to hire a PSIC level 1. How do I know, or if level 2, like what am I going to get? Is this person going to know like a particular like what level can they teach up to? Are they just going to be adventuring around? Like I just show people, like, do you get what I'm saying? Like I would want to know, what can these people teach and to what level? Can you guys speak to that? Maybe Jeff?
Sure. Yeah. Like, the the adventure is really, it's a philosophy, right? It is what is driving us as a group of people in our leadership team, it's a way of kind of catching the instructor's attention in what their purpose is, right? It's not to be repetitive, but it's bigger than just the lesson. It's actually like if you treat it like an adventure and like you're the designer of that experience, and you're going to go out there and you're not just teaching skiing. It's so much more than that. You're creating this unbelievably immersive, compelling experience that somebody's going to come back for, because that is a thing that the industry is asking for, is that repeat. But behind that is, there is technical knowledge. There is, structure of how to teach. We have something called the technical blueprint, which basically lays out a way for an instructor to look at skiing through what we're calling a purpose-based lens, essentially. So really understanding, based on the snow conditions, based on the conditions of the day, the people that you're working with, is what are they actually trying to accomplish? And when you can, it often boils down to what is the ski doing on the snow. And when they know that, then they can start to move through, well, okay, this is happening on the snow because the skier is moving like this. And if I want something different, or if they want something different to happen, if they have a bit of a goal in mind, then we can change how the skier moves so that they can change how they manipulate the ski. And then bang, we're kind of back down at the bottom, manipulating or getting a different outcome or a different purpose, intent, whatever you want to call that. So to go back to your question, in the pathway, while the adventure guides it, and it does feel very philosophical, how they get there is very clearly laid out. We have a concept called the adventure builder that says, it's a bit of a lesson structure, right? It's connect and create, and facilitation and feedback, and practice and play. Like, that's a cycle that we want to help the instructor go through, and to understand how that actually helps the student. The technical blueprint, which I've talked about. I'm sure we'll get an opportunity to talk about what we refer to as the method, which it kind of actually drives all of that. So yeah, it isn't, to your point, it isn't just it's not just a guiding adventure. It is technical knowledge and understanding. It's driven by scientific backing as well. How people learn, how people engage, what does a connection do with someone? Like all of that stuff is in there as well.
I guess I was just trying to, I was thinking, oh, what about, if I go back to Australia and I speak with the ski school director at Threadbow, and they're like, yeah, this new PSIC started up, and I've got a bunch of people that have applied, and they're level 1 PSIC. Like, what? He's probably going to go like, what do they know? Because he's probably had level 1 Austrians, Canadians,
Totally.
also, right? And he knows what they can do. And you're like, right, I could put them on this program. So I guess I'm not going to hire anyone at this point anyway, but I'm thinking from those ski school directors listening to this around the world, this is your chance to tell them like what, like on a piece of paper, they can teach advanced bumps, they can teach 180s, they can teach whatever, like anything on that sort of line.
So I can start the answer to that. So really, where we started, if we're getting to the nuts and bolts, really in Canada, we're, as you know, Tom, we're a 4-level system, which mirrors most of the world from that perspective. And the industry is what sets that. In Canada, skiing is a not-for-profit. It's not federally regulated. It's actually regulated by the industry. So on that, the industry is already set a level 1, 2, 3, and 4. So our resort partners and our ski school directors that are on the industry steering committee, they're really the owners of the ski schools that pay for these certain certifications. So what we did is we mirrored that in Canada on par to the level. So the amount of time spent on task in those levels is the same as it's always been here. In fact, at the level 3, it's a day longer in there. So our learning outcomes, both on the teaching and on the skiing, mirror what a level one could do before, which is, you enter the ski school and you're ready to go for your first day, and you can teach a novice lesson up to the very basics of parallel. And then a level 2 is a bit more, and a level 3, really that's all mountain, and a level 4, you get into the training room. So we didn't break the mold on that. Like the hierarchy of levels and the competency of the skiing and the teaching in there was already set by the industry. So we mirrored that. Where we've put our work in is the tool sets and how we evaluate that and what the competencies there are. So I think your question in there, and I don't want to dominate the microphone here, if you're a ski school director from elsewhere, how would you know? So what we've been doing quite extensively is we built a rather robust 50+ page document. We called it an international equivalency package. And we sent all of our overviews of each of the levels and the pathway and all of the curriculum that makes it up. And it's quite robust in our technical materials. And we even gave a link to our e-learning platform, which is a learning management system, which, people go in and do a bunch of e-learning. So we front load a bunch of our base representations. So their time on task, which is on the hill, is more productive, and showed them that for equivalencies. And we have a number of equivalencies, across the definitely the English speaking nations now, where you can go, from Australia, let's just take Australia, we have equivalency with the APSI. So you could take your PSIC level 1 across to Australia, and you can enter their pathway and do the APSI level 2. And that's the intent, and that's what we've done everywhere. So, as a PSIC level, you'll have the equivalency package. You'll know what it's equivalent to in your own organization that you're intimately familiar with. And then kind of that's where that competency level sits. Now, as we all know, comes down to individuals, comes down to experience, and that all comes into play. But as far as that typical hierarchical model that's assessed, we followed kind of the standard in Canada because that's set by the industry. We had an international package go out of equivalency, and in the example that you brought up, Australia, that's all completed, and kind of that's how it works.
Nice. Guy, anything to add there?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I've been involved, from fairly early on. And, I would say, as one of the trainers for the LPT training, just sinking my teeth into this material does feel very refreshing, and in some ways liberating. And, I've been involved in the creation of some of the curriculum. And yeah, it's just been a pleasure to be involved from the ground up. Just sort of, harking back to your original question, and to be involved with such a passionate group of people, and that's attracting, like-minded individuals to help this thing blossom, and to watch it blossom has just been, quite astonishing, to be honest, and very refreshing. And, it's just been, like I said, a pleasure to be involved from the ground up.
That was one of the questions I had, actually, is has this starting from scratch again, and you mentioned it was refreshing. Have you found now, like being on a course, do you feel like a little bit more inspired and creative? Like
absolutely.
An example in there, like maybe an actual on snow example from one of the courses where you went down a certain path and it resulted in something good because you had freedom.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe we can get into the method in a little bit, but working the concept of the challenge zone is such a great way to gauge where your trainees are at any moment, and then base your decision making, on your observations, and working to keep them in a zone where everything is fresh and fun and does feel like an adventure, even though they're working through their own technique. So yeah, for me, the refreshing part is the tools that I feel we now have at our disposal to inform our decision making in a very, very productive way, in a very positive way. And it's liberating in a way, and I think we've all been in sessions where we felt ourselves digging a little bit of a hole, and perhaps things aren't running the way we'd hoped them to have been. And I just feel some of the tools that we've created and now have at our disposal just sort of circumvent the amount that sort of happens on hill. So from my perspective, it's kind of liberating and refreshing to be able to lean on this material in a way that has real world consequences when you're in front of the guests and or trainees, and that is very inspiring.
Can I add to that too? Like some of it for me, because I'll echo Guy for sure. Like I'm yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's coincidental, but I'm enjoying teaching and training, and my own skiing and the thought processes that I'm in and that more now than ever. Um, but I think some of it is actually in the structure that we've built. To go back to where Mark was earlier, which is, we've moved away from from 100% consequential final exam at every step of the process. And what I honestly feel that doing in two realms is it's liberating because what we're not finding ourselves doing during programs is practicing that final exam. Right, we're constantly in a process of dealing with exactly what's there, and we're doing I've started to refer to them as micro sessions in my own head, right? We're repeatedly able to get participants involved in discussions and question and answer and listening to their collaboration between each other and how they interact with each other. That's actually built right into our learning outcomes at every level as well, which is active participation with your peers, trainers, and learning activities. And um, but what I think is the most impactful in terms of this, this liberation, if we can call it that the Guy's referring to, is that because we're not training them towards a 1 hour exam or a 2 hour exam or anything like that, or a series of a select few ski off maneuvers that will be done on one day, and so on. What that's actually forcing us to do is teach like I think we teach in our everyday lives, and so there isn't this kind of I'll call it that sort of heavy bearing down feeling of, okay, I'm coming to the end of this training session, of 2 or 3 or 4 days. And now we're into this practicing the final product, because we know that the final product is it's not going to be the same today as it is tomorrow, as it is the next day, because everything changes. The people change, the snow changes, everything changes. So basically, it is in our structure that actually changes it. And for me as a trainer, I'm finding way more productivity. I'm finding far deeper engagement and a lot of freedom. I'm sensing a lot of freedom and liberation on the part of the participants, because they aren't worried about a final presentation of something. They're involved in the learning. They're thinking about it. They're trying. They're making mistakes. They're doing all that stuff that you have to do when you learn, all the way through to the end of that training session. And then we have all that information that we've collected to kind of go, okay, this is what we've seen. And yeah, it's been really productive. So like fun, exciting, different, but actually honestly super productive at the same time, which is what we need and what we want. So I'm stoked about it. Like
Yeah, I
I
can
get
hear
giddy about
that
it sometimes.
in
Yeah.
all your voices, and I think
Yeah.
that's you're all saying you love working with all the people that have come together for this new association, and yeah, you can hear it.
So
So
Tom,
yeah,
sorry, just because Jeff's enthusiasm reminded me. I'm very fortunate that we just had our level 4 startup camp, and we had lots of people in it. So I got to go from group to group to group to group, and I could see, and I'm talking, many interski team members and extremely, extremely well recognized, competent trainers out there. And what they are loving and what the groups are loving in there, if you just look at our, we call them our learning outcomes. So our skiing outcomes, at kind of level 2, we call it level 2, but what we're doing is we're adding versatility to your skiing. At level 1, we talk about the fundamentals. At level 2, it's versatility. At level 3, we actually advance skiing. It's versatility and adaptability. And at our level 4, which is expert skiing, we're adding that creativity. So it's versatility, adaptability, and creativity. And what does that look like? It looks like, rather than an expert short turn, which there's really no such thing because it's situation based what an expert short turn is in any situation, right? If it's flat, it's pure carved. If it's 50 degrees, there's a fraction at the end that's carved, but they're both expert short turns. So when we let the mountain guide us, that was the enthusiasm you hear from the candidates and the trainers out there when they're out there training our 4 different short turn types that represent a range of expert short turns on the mountain, whether it's the steered short turn or the carved short turn or the free short turn or into the medium turns where we're doing stivetts. I'm getting excited just talking about it again because we finally get to go out and ski everywhere on the mountain, and it's situation based, and we work on practical, purpose-based, relevant skiing wherever it is. You're not searching out this perfect run to try and practice this one maneuver that's supposed to be representative of expert level skiing. Like, when I talk about it like this, it's wow, why haven't we done this before? It's fairly obvious. But anyway, so I see these amazing pedigree of teachers out there using this full of enthusiasm, like a Jeff Marks, like a Guy Hetherington, like all the other folks I could mention without mentioning them here because they're not here, so I won't do that. But very high caliber.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. So then how do you grow, like, how does someone then pass their level 4? What's that look like, for example?
Yeah, so it takes a bit more time because we give them a bunch of opportunities to show us their best and to ski the mountain and to teach the mountain and to go through all the learning outcomes. So to pass your level 4, it's first of all, you don't go until you're ready. So our structure, we have these, startup camp and then a top up camp, either skiing, and a top up camp teaching, where you go. What I want to bring up to answer that question first is it's a philosophy of the organization, and we are development first, certification second. And what that means to us is it's really, we want to build lifelong learners, and we represent the milestones at the levels and we celebrate them, but it's not the purpose for us doing what we do. It's not the destination. It's the development along the way. So we create an environment where we're breeding and fostering and cultivating lifelong skiers and lifelong learners through all of these tool sets and the mechanisms and our culture and our community and our philosophy. So when we do get there and when people are ready, it takes a little longer because we want to put them in a positive space and a positive environment. And we've actually looked quite a bit and interrogated the learning sciences. And we actually have, some folks we've brought on the positive psychology with positive psychology PhDs to help us with this, formulate where we're going with these evaluations. And that's it. It's 4 days of you having continual snippets of teaching in real world environments and all of these skiing outcomes. We're doing it over and over, and it costs us a little bit more because we put more than one a trainer out there with them, but you're skiing and teaching the whole time, in and out, just lots of opportunities. And really that's the mechanism, without kind of getting into the real detail of it. But
Would it be,
it's
would
hard.
it be fair to say, if I was there doing my level 4, if I was like, skiing around and Jeff sees me doing some great short turns that really work for that terrain, they're exciting, it's kind of at the level and maybe I did it a couple of times and a third time wasn't so good and whatever, but Jeff in his head would be like, right, I can kind of like tick off Tom. I think he can do that. His consistency level is at the point, and same with other kind of maneuvers. Jeff, would that be?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we wanted to make sure to have an opportunity where we could really see the kind of the whole person, if that makes sense, right? So see them in multiple situations, interacting with each other, doing a lot of teaching over and over again. The reality is that, the system we know well is that, there's an hour-long teaching exam, for example. In this 4-day completion camp that Mark referred to, which is kind of the, it's where you want to go to finish this process off, right? And that is a bit of a different journey for everybody, but we'll spend 4 days with those people, and they'll be we're working with them, we're supporting them, we're giving advice. We're not just standing back and saying, okay, the floor is yours, go.
And then
we're
doing this,
stepping.
writing a
That's right.
piece of yeah.
And that is,
Secretly.
we've talked about that already, where we're trying to really step towards them in this process, because ultimately our goal is to pull and to get them there.
Yeah.
And it actually puts us in a more it adds responsibility to us to do that and to get involved in the process. So, but maybe more specifically to your question, we're putting on a ton of miles, and keep in mind, like, we haven't run our level 4 completion camp yet, right? So we have yet to get to that part of the process. What we have done is start with the startup camps, which I think we across the country now, we've had 32 people, I think, involved in that. And then there's the top up camps if you need specific work in your skiing or your teaching. We've got the teach and ski top ups, and then the completion. And we're going to coach people to help them get there in a with a skill set that has them kind of ready, so that we're polishing it a little bit, we're sanding the edges, but we're not starting from scratch. And so we are recommending that process to go through. But
So
they're
would
going to
it
be,
be like,
we're going to see them skiing and teaching more than we ever have, which is
I'm
great.
just imagining, like, I'm there, you're taking me out, and it's first thing, and something black is groomed, it's perfect. It's like, hey everyone, let's go ski this like really well. Like, there's an opportunity right in that. Like, let's use that. And oh hey, let's check it at the end of the day. Who can still ski really well, even though now it's a bit mogully. And then, oh, right. So, James, you just got to change your timing. Like, you're trying to pressure it too early. That worked fine on the groom, but right now like, that would be an example. And then if James just suddenly, like, yeah, wow, that's so much better, do it again, you're kind of like in your head going, yeah.
And
I don't
Tom,
even need to add to that. You just,
Okay,
that's exactly it.
yeah. I could just, that's so real. I mean, I just like the normal way does it. I think it doesn't also produce, say you go through the system of how you get your level whatever is marked down on a sheet of paper, and it's a one run ski off. It sort of creates someone at the end of that, almost with their guest, does a similar kind of process, like, oh yeah, I told you how to do this stuff, but you didn't really do it well. And so, all right. And maybe they don't, because they haven't seen, say in your situation, you'd go, James, you just got to change this part. And, or I need to come up with it. I didn't say it right. I've got to come up with something else because James is not getting it in this situation. So then I can just see how that would already produce a better instructor, because their experience of getting better is exactly the same as passing it, which is what happens in a real lesson.
And we do that while they're teaching too. And that you still notice people ski while they teach, and everyone. So you're constantly watching people ski and teach. And what you just said, Tom, was perfect, because traditionally many exam formats, there's no learning in there. There's a lot of stress, but there's no learning. This is still 4 days of development. You're never hanging anyone out there to dry, because if they're not there, you can still work in a positive space.
I would add too that, as a level 4 course conductor, when assessing someone's teaching, when they're ready, they're going to step up within the context of the lesson and the group, and be seen more like as a co-pilot of the session. They're coming up through, they're coming of age, and you can sense that as a trainer, when somebody's ready, they're rising to the challenge, and they're coming up with original ideas, and they're presenting them succinctly, and they're making a difference. And that is something that is tangible. That is something that is not tangible in the context of a 1-hour lesson where you have the clipboard out. So it's not a useful assessment mechanism anywhere near as much as what I just described earlier. When someone's ready because they rise to the challenge, and it's a beautiful thing when they do, and you feel it, and we all feel it, and they take the reins and away they go. And that's the environment we're trying to foster with the way we're assessing our top level instructors, and we think it's going to render exceptional results. So that's kind of where we're at with it. I think it's akin a little bit to, I'm not a martial arts guy, but I know jiu-jitsu, for example. I don't think they have an exam to become a black belt. They train with their sensei or whatever they call them, and they roll with them. And when that person starts catching their trainer out here and there, they're presented the black belt. And it's a little bit more like that than it is like, like the old system.
Well, I want to add this too, and I'll credit Guy with this as well. Is it's at, I don't even remember when this was, but back in the fall, as we were somewhat frantically trying to be ready to launch everything this season. Guy said something to us while we were sitting in headquarters at Whistler there. And Guy, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was something like this, which is, you know what? And we were sorting out what we were going to do for learning outcomes or performance criteria for skiing. And Guy basically said, if we're going to live this adventure philosophy, then we need to live it all the way through our pathway. We can't find ourselves at a place in our pathway where suddenly we stop being the adventurers and creating that philosophy and that aura and that environment, and we click over into something that is much more stressful, and the fun drains out of it a little bit, and it becomes this daunting task. I mean, don't get me wrong, like achieving the level 4 of any organization, it is a task. It is a huge undertaking, and it's an awesome thing to do, and it is hard, and that's what makes it awesome. So that's very cool. But we really wanted to challenge ourselves to not let that part go away. Let's not let the level 4 evaluation become anything other than an adventure. And what happened was as we sat in headquarters, being Mark's living room, we're sitting in Mark's living room, and we were sitting there. There's no snow on the ground. We're months from the winter still, and we're sitting there getting excited about the range of skiing and how we're going to evaluate this, because it started to feel, even in the conversation, like real skiing. And Tom, you said it, right? Like you could just imagine going around, like literally, we're going to go out together. We're going to rip around this hill all day for 4 days. You're going to teach some, you're going to ski a bunch, you're going to help each other out. You're going to do all the things that we do for a living in as real a context as possible. And away we go. And like, Tom, I hear you talk about it and you're excited about it. I can tell James is going to pass, by the way, just you're talking about it, right? Like, it's great. And so for us, we're actually excited about getting to that point in this process, because we haven't run it yet. We haven't actually run a level 3 evaluation yet, but that part is coming now too. We've run some teaching and skiing trainings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to learn a lot in that process. But the point is that when we focus on that, is how do we make this as real as possible? How do we keep the adventure in it? We actually all do better anyway. The performance rises. We do a better job of helping people out, and I think that's what I really hear. Better outcomes.
Yeah, this process is facilitating. It's enabling these really special trainers to do their thing, because they've gotten to the point they're at because they're so dedicated in their physical, mental training, and so this gives them freedom to. It more sounds like, I'm going to show you how I got as good as I am. So just come along with me, and I'm going to
get out of your way. Yeah.
And then get out. I mean, like I must say, like I get flack sometimes for, leaving an association that, like the Australian Association, that gave me my level 4, went to some interskis with, and they're like, why didn't you give back to that association and things like that? And I do feel guilty for that. However, whenever I would do courses and exams, I would feel contained. This is the first time I'm saying this publicly, but I didn't enjoy it. And my skiing wasn't getting better anytime because of doing those things. It was when I was away with other people, with freedom to experiment and to explore with other ideas. And I went, this is what I want to do. And I don't live forever. So I need to change course. I'm just going to follow what I want, like my own path, and how I want to learn skiing. And it just sounds like this, what you guys are creating with the PSIC, is a culture that enables that individual to sort of thrive. And even, like you said, no idea, I can't remember what it was, but you're open to all new ideas. So if something better comes up because Jamie Jack figured out this and shares it with all of you on it, you're like, yeah, let's all try that, instead of, no, it's in the document. We talk about this and we don't mention that word, and it's too much to change it.
Yeah,
Totally.
Tom,
Yeah,
even on that.
the term is the free marketplace of ideas. You want ideas to bubble up, and just, it doesn't matter where they come from, because I'm a level 4 examiner and you're not, should not enter into that equation. And if we can continue to propagate that philosophy, it will empower people. It will give them the freedom to think, and the freedom to think is what people need as they're developing. You stifle that and you're not doing them a service at all.
Absolutely.
Yeah, something that came from the industry steering committee, which is interesting, and we all know, as we're just on the theme there, and on the ethos of everyone has something to offer. It would point out, the highest repeat rate in our ski school is that girl over there. Do you know what certification she has? She's a level 2. And she goes, oh, okay. Well, what is she doing so well that, on those metrics, she has the highest repeat rate in the season? Well, we should be finding out. So everyone has something to offer. And when you create a space for people, as I said, permission to think and contribute, and these environments where, people, we got to get rid of the culture where failure is deemed as a negative, because then people don't want to speak up. Like those being able to speak up, that's where you learn more and you get to listen more. So yeah, just on that, just having people feel like they can contribute at all levels. And in this case, your example, Tom, is, right at our trainers at the top level, they feel like they've got the shackles off. And, that said, they do, but they have to know their stuff, and at our level 4, there'll be 2 of them out there for the 4 days. And they're going to be burning a lot of energy. Our brain consumes 30% of our energy just when we're sitting here, let alone out there skiing. But they'll be out there, assessing and developing and helping people the whole time. So I was going to say this before, we've created, historically, we've created something very easy for the trainers or the examiners to mark a ski run. You just stand at the bottom of your clipboard and people go by and you mark. Rather than get out there and work with them, get your hands dirty, here's a longer time, give them an environment where they've got a bunch of opportunities and they feel good. So let's make it a bit harder on the trainer in that regard, or the examiner, because you got to get your hands dirty and you got to get there for 4 days. But let's create an environment that's better for our candidates and for our people and for the community. And it's amazing. You get the right people at the trainer level who are lifelong learners, and they're thriving in this environment. And the only other thing I'll say on that, and we'll get into it, there is still quite a bit of structure behind the scenes for our training development. And we've got our technical blueprint, and we're working with a biomechanist, so a PhD in biomechanics, on our movement principles, because purpose provides perspective. So when you have that perspective, you can start to figure out, what do we need to do? And then that drives what movement, and movement's specific to situations, but there's some movement principles that hold true for most things. And we've got the learning sciences in there. So deliberate practice, they have to understand how that works. And we've already mentioned the adventure and the method, and, our progressions and positive psychology. And then we've got kind of the science of skiing, how we think and how it works. So as much as we provide a space for them to do what they do, we also provide a space for them, which is our Ski Pro Institute, which is outside the pathway development, for our trainers to embody that lifelong learning. And we've created a bunch of tool sets and frameworks that we put a lot of effort into, and we're moving forward. And as a community, they represent some really neat concepts that are improving the best of the best. And, Jeff Marks is an example here. He's out there more excited when he's using the method when he teaches. And I've heard, 4 or 5 people say exactly the same thing. I can't believe this tool set that we've exposed in the method is helping me be a better teacher at this far in. And we should get that. That's probably a segue. So I
want to switch gears just for a moment, just for the listener to maybe just a bit of refreshing. We're all ski nerds here, without a doubt. Think probably way too much about skiing, and our partners probably really get annoyed at that. However, let's do that. So as a segue, each of you, I'm actually genuinely interested. What are you thinking about in this season to work on in your own skiing? Like, I've got a few things in different types of terrain that I'm trying to really get better at this season. So Guy, what's your thing this year?
Yeah, I have been thinking about a bunch of things, Tom, that have been working, and it's always, I'm constantly experimenting when I'm on the hill. I'm playing around with different movements, seeing what the reaction is, and I'm working to try and create a set of movements that hold true for a variety of different snow surface conditions. I think that consistency. I'm tall. I'm almost 6'5". So my margins of error, I would argue, are a little slimmer than most. But what I'm working on is to develop very good control over my rotational tension, I would call it, in my leg, so that I'm getting some rotational tension as edge angle builds early in the turn, and then I'm controlling my direction with a strong hip movement inside. And when I find when I have those two things in mind, good tension with the outside leg, inward into the turn, and then allowing the hip to settle in at that very precise moment to drive the power in the turn. When I can nail both of those things more consistently than not, I'm feeling a very pure push. The ground reaction force that comes through the center of my outside foot sort of skewers my center of mass, and I feel it being pushed across the hill with a very sort of pure feeling. And I liken it to hitting a tennis ball right in the center of the racket, or a golf ball right in the center of the club. The combination of power that you feel and balance at the same time is that pure feeling that I'm searching for. And I find those two sort of cues in my mind are what I work on to try and most consistently find that power.
And how did you identify that this was something you wanted to work on, improve?
Yeah, well, again, a couple of things, experimentation. And I'm a very visual guy, and I know we're all multimodal in our learning, from the learning sciences, but I watch a lot of, like we all do as ski nerds, I watch a lot of high-end skiers on YouTube. And some might say I'm obsessed with one particular gentleman by the name of Richard Berger. And one thing that strikes me with his skiing is how precisely he positions his hip relative to his outside foot. And he's immaculate with that placement. And I just think that puts him in the driver's seat. And one thing I notice with him is he never gets caught too far forward. He regulates his knee flexion just to keep the hip slightly behind and inside the arc, not too far that he's getting jetted and has the rug pulled out. And certainly he never gets that hung on the front of the boot and, losing the tail of the ski. So just trying to find the pocket of the hip position while still maintaining good control over the rotary of the outside leg is what, to me, really defines it. And when I watch him, I just see it. I see it every turn, and that's what I'm trying to emulate. So I try and emulate it, and then I try and feel it, and then I try and reproduce it. And once I've done that, then I can up the performance level and see if it holds true. And obviously you have to be ahead of the game in your mind in terms of the timing of these moves as the speed and cadence increases. And to me, that's the challenge of it, and that's where I'm playing. So I like to,
only because I saw some video of you the other day. It's probably on Instagram,
right?
And your skiing did look different. It looked I don't know, it looked snappier.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what you're saying you're looking for, right? Not so smoothy,
Yeah, exactly.
Bam, bam, bam,
exactly.
bam. And when you hit it, you don't get thrown off balance. So that's one thing I would say. I can definitely see that in your skiing of the most recent video.
Oh, that's
the other
good
thing
to know.
is, it's just interesting too. When we try and describe these things, like if people didn't really know, I can get, Jeff can probably get, Mark can probably, but you explain that to someone who's not really got much, like that just sounds like, whatever. Like,
I know. Well, it does. And it I wouldn't necessarily teach it that way, but that's how it feels to me.
Distilled into your, exactly. You've
that's the
distilled
way
it to
exactly. I
Yeah.
think about it in those terms. I might present
Yeah.
those concepts in different terms if I was to, depending on the audience, of course. But
Probably over a week
yeah,
of,
yeah, totally.
right? Like, yeah, you'd need that long. But it's so true. I like this idea of distilling because you take a lot of volume of something and then you just eke out like the essence of it. And then all you end up with is like two words
Yeah,
or this feeling or this you know what I mean? And the
totally.
sucky thing is we have to put words to that to try and
Yeah,
explain to Jeff and to Mark what the heck we're talking about. But
yeah.
it's difficult.
Yeah, and there might be a couple of cues that I give myself to, amp myself up before any particular run. And then really it's a feeling. I get in the zone and then I just try and reproduce that feeling. So it's a little, it's hard to pin down. The
Mm.
nuance. I mean, the day that they build a robot that can ski bumps, they'll have AI nailed, in my opinion. Until that time, we're it. So
Yep. Yep.
yeah.
Jeff, what about yourself?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's funny too because we listen to everybody's smiling, right? Like we're all we're
Yeah.
all like actually emotionally involved in Guy's description of what he's working on in his skiing, which is awesome. Yeah, you know what? Like I don't I was thinking about it while engrossed in Guy's description. I was also kind of trying to boil it down to, yeah, what am I doing? And maybe there's a couple of big picture things. Like one is like I've always been I don't know, like a cautious skier, I guess, like finesse and precision and that kind of thing. I'm trying to just put that aside. Like I'm trying to go faster in the bumps. I'm trying to like get messy when I need to and let that be where I am in my learning. And actually it's been awesome, right? Like I've found new lines in the bumps. LPT training in Whistler, I skied with a couple of people out there in my group that I was helping them, they were helping me. They brought stuff to my game that I was like, well, this is what I'm working on, and it was phenomenal. It was super awesome. Um, More specifically, where I'm playing is I'm kind of in the pressure game um these days, where I'm really investigating, how I can or how I do or how I want to move pressure around, like to the tip of the ski, to the tail of the ski, all that kind of stuff. Steeper terrain, I've been watching a lot of just short clips. I mean, Benny, the Bend It Like Benny clips that
Yeah.
have come out recently. Like, man, how he's pulling those short turns off on the snow. Um, like that's exciting stuff. And I look at that and I'm like, sure, it probably doesn't fit the description of any ski off run of any organization anywhere. And it's cool, right? Like it's different, it's creative, it's exciting. And I'm trying to just get more of that. I mean, even some of your stuff, Tom, like I'm not on, I'm not in your in as a member, but I watch your clips and I pick up on little things like inside edge of the heel. Like that's a
Yeah.
that's a phrase that I was watching real quick and it was like, oh, interesting. So I went out and I tried it, right? And so I'm trying it in short turns and I'm seeing what stuff does and I'm just really having fun messing around with those things. And what it is doing is I'm finding more performance in more places on a longer ski as well. Like I find I'm driving a longer radius ski better than I ever have. I'm doing a shorter, more active, exciting short turn on steeper pitches and stuff. And yeah, that's kind of where I want to go. And it's actually, I think that's what's showing up in my teaching now too. I think I'm actually willing to speak in those terms, if I can put it that way. I'm not as galvanized in what
Yes.
I believe works, right? That is actually exciting. And so yeah, that's kind of where I'm at is yeah,
That's
pressure
cool.
games.
Yeah, I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
Mark?
Yeah, well, I just think it's awesome listening to both Jeff and Guy get into what they're changing in their skiing. And, I think it represents something that we've been doing this year as an organization, right? That permission to think, permission to change. But for me, I always like to go kind of purpose, interaction, movement. And what I've been playing on, particularly this year, because particularly we've been building our kind of technical blueprint and skiing is really getting the snow to push on us and then balancing against that force, right? So it's force alignment and manipulation of that So one of our movement principles, as we get into the movement, so because you need, purpose to provide perspective that gives you what you're moving. And for me, it's all around our concept of, proximal stiffness for distal mobility. So in layman's terms, that's just having a stiff and strong core, so you can use the extremities like your legs and feet and skis in this case with more athleticism or more mobility. So that, proximal stiffness for distal athleticism or mobility. And what I've been doing to do that is biomechanically helping that process. And it works everywhere. So it's things like, I know there's a bunch of people right now on the podcast after what I'm about to say, you'll be like, oh, I can't believe you're doing that. And it's dragging the inside pole with intention. And really using not just the proprioception that most people think it is, and it is, but it actually allows us another point of contact with the upper body ballast, so the mass that we can manipulate and work against. So it gives us a lot more strength, right? It's the same as using the inside ski with purpose. As you bring it back, but keep a bit of pressure on the tip, it allows the inside hip to be braced against the snow a little bit, which allows the outside leg to abduct better. And what it really does is, expert skiing, there's all skiing, but expert skiing, we notice it, that fine line between pure grip and a little bit of drift. And we really need that little bit of drift because that's the art of skiing. It's not that difficult to carve a modern ski.
No,
what is more difficult is to, while you're during that carve, is to take it off and just let it drift a little bit to get a bit more steering angle. And this concept of proximal stiffness for distal mobility and the mechanisms we do that, whether the inside pole and or both, normally the way we use the inside foot allows that abduction of the outside leg for me. And I've really noticed it when I want to do some drifted turns, but high performance drifted turns. And it's been magical. And, if anyone's a ski nerd, I'm the epitome of a ski nerd, kind of some of the, my authorship in the past and different things is very much around the physics of skiing and all of that. And to bring in and to work with, we asked earlier on, one of the things starting from scratch with the organization, what have you been able to do? Well, the first thing happens to be one of the leaders, one of the owners is Ed, who is a biomechanist. So to work with him on, I've always known about, functional stiffness is what I call it in the core, and to him to explain to me what it really is, and then us push around, me as the clinician, him as the scientist, this concept for the practical in the real world. It's magic. I'm excited to show you, Tom, when you ski, and to show our best coaches how this works, because I'm probably the oldest of this group and skied a lot with intent. And these little movement pattern changes and understanding are improving my skiing, even as I've just crept over 50. So that's amazing. Yeah. Not Richie,
Tom,
but
Tom, can I ask you what you're working on? Since we have you here.
Yeah, sure. I think Jeff, maybe Jason even sort of alluded to this to you. Jason Simpson was talking about it, but
he didn't actually allude to it. He raved about it. Just
okay.
But I'm guessing, but he raved about something, and I'm going to see if it's the same
floating
thing.
heel. The floating heel. Yeah. Okay. All right. So to give some context, here's the setup. So you take a child that is really athletic, can run around, 6-year-old, they can play soccer, and then the first time ever you put them in a pair of ski boots. And they walk around. It's almost like when you put socks on a dog and they kind of like walk awkwardly, like what? They suddenly just can't walk normally. Yeah, yeah. So you do that to a child and they suddenly can't walk properly. So I think this happens to a lot of people just in general. We get put in this ski boot and you think like, okay, right, well, my ankle and my foot is kind of fixed in this position and I just work as best I can with that. However, I've been trying to get outside this idea and think the ski boot is just an environment, just like my office is an environment. If I go to the gym and I'm working out on rubber mats or concrete or wood, that's just the surface, the environment I'm working on. Okay, so the ski boot, same thing. It's just kind of a bit tight. However, it means I don't have to confine myself to standing on my whole foot the whole time, because I think most people, they stand in a ski boot and they just stand heel, ball the foot, and they stay there the whole time. And so there's one thing. And then out there is this idea that if the heel lifts, that's a bad thing, right? Most boot fitters, oh shivers, your heel's lifting, we need to lock that down. Shouldn't have heel lift. That's bad. Okay, so new idea to me came. It's like, in all the sports I play, if my heel can't lift at all, it's very difficult. Like the child putting on the ski boots on, this suddenly, oh, can't lift my heel, can't move. So I'm thinking about being inside that ski boot and playing with what I call the floating heel. So I'm trying to balance more of the time, and I'd say probably 70% of the time in say, like, especially the shorter the turn, the more it's the heel is less on the ground. Trying to be up on the front of the foot and using the toes. That's another thing. Who's been told, like, if you're gripping your toes, you're doing it wrong, right? I've even taught people, I've said, don't do that. That's wrong. Maybe even lift your toes. I reckon that's bullshit. Because again, if you're bouncing forward with nothing more, what is stopping you from falling on your face? Your toes. And a lot of the time with skiing, steeper it gets, the more forward you need to be in order to be gliding with that slope. So you have to kind of be up there on the top of the turn, especially. So I'm trying to have a floating heel. I'm trying to actively be sensing where my big toe and how much is being used. If I'm feeling it, it means I'm right up at the precipice of that balance point. I'm really pushing the limits of being right up on the front of the foot. And so this floating heel allows this freedom. You got to try this. Your leg can move with ease. Just like if you put your leg in the air, if you have your leg in the air, and what Mark was talking about, the inside leg being more of a fixed point creates freedom for the outer one. As soon as both heels are free, the legs have massive amounts of freedom. And then, like, back to Guy's thing, choosing that like sting moment and lining the hip up and the inside edge of the heel, then I'm like storing ready, like pulling back a punch, and then bam, dropping it at a certain point. Whereas if I'm standing there already, it's like the magic part's over, and I'm passive, and I'll probably end up making a rotational movement to try and get something to happen that's not an ideal thing. Anyway, it's helped massively in the bumps. So when I ski down bumps, the first thing I do is I get my heel off the bottom of my boot. I get more on my toes, and I start skiing down, because as soon as you hit a bump, your heel comes down straight away. So you got to actively get off of it. And the way I know this season, getting over the first 2 days, my calves were just so sore after 2 days skiing, because it was just all the way up on the front of the foot the whole time. So yeah, that's what I've been working with, and really enjoying it.
Nice. Oh, I look forward to trying that. Absolutely. It's definitely an out of the box thought. So yeah, it's exciting to play around. And, you probably got there just through experimenting. Okay, what happens if I do this? Oh, that felt good. Okay, follow that node a little bit. See where it takes me. Can I build this into something that I can use from this point forward? And
I should actually give full credit to the I have this mentor that is an amazing athletics coach. I think he's skied a couple of times in his life, but he just understands movement of anything. You can show him video of anything, and he's like, oh, that's what's going on. And he looks at everything through levers and physics, and just sees things very different. And he was telling me about the heel, but more to do with athletics and running and all that sort of stuff. And I went, hang on, well, if that's a principle that works there, probably in skiing works the same. Just be athletic inside your ski boots. Don't be flat-footed. And just so for the people listening, this is what I see now, so clear as day, with the Canadian system that I used to, like, I've done my level 3 with, because a lot of it is, where's the balance point? Everyone gets told to stand on the back of the arch. And you can't try and play tennis standing on the back of your arch. Try and run a marathon always trying to stand on the back of your arch, and do any kind of sport. It's a point you hit, but it's not, I don't think it's your home position. I actually think more in front. So anyway, that's an interesting thing. People listening can leave that or delete that. And yeah, but yeah, anything you guys, Mark, comments on?
Yeah, no, that's great. Two comments. I would agree with you. If we stay static at one point, it is that it's not dynamic, it's static, because we need to be able to use the tool, which is the ski. And sometimes we need to be using the forebody predominantly, probably at the start of the turn, if we want to use kind of bend them like Benny or whatever,
Benny.
kind of the Benny. And then, as we progress kind of the mid to the completion of the turn, you want to be moving that force alignment back to arrest some of that drift and get a little bit more kind of grip, and maybe even kind of straighten the ski path out. So if you put yourself in one position, and we look at how the exquisitely the tool is designed, which is our ski, we're not able to utilize it properly if you're staying in one position the whole time. You look at the big stivets at the World Cup, and they're magic with the high definition cameras now, and you'll notice them. They come across the hill and they get a big steering angle, and they're trying not to grip the snow at all because they don't want to slow themselves down. But you see them feathering it right on the tip, and then bringing it down, and that tip bites, and then the mid body bites, and then the ski really grips and propels them, and they get onto the tail a little bit, and they do it all over again. So they're certainly using the entire length of the tool or the ski, and kind of some of your iterations there. If we're just standing at one fixed point and actually training to stay at one fixed point under our heel, we're missing on a lot of adaptability and creativity in our skiing.
Yeah.
How
And
do
I
you
would
get
say,
the floating heel though? How do you do that in your boot? Do you give yourself a little bit more room somehow?
no, not necessarily. No, I haven't changed anything in the boot setup. It's actually because I've taught this to a lot of people with some pretty good results. And I would say that, like, even before thinking about this, I was always trying to, and I think all of us probably here, manipulating the whole entire length of the ski. So this is how you almost want to think different. It's beyond that. It's almost like, just imagine the ski is traveling, like, say it was just going straight across bumps. Okay. So we're not trying to make the ski turn or anything. We're just going straight through bumps. And you have to go on a ride on this ski. You're bolted in with your boot. How are you going to stand to have a comfortable ride going across that? It's back to, like, as simple as that. So if you stand flat footed, you could hip hinging, slamming forward, bam, bam, bam. Like, as soon as you jump off a set of stairs, off a box, naturally the human body wants to land ball of the foot and then heel later.
Yeah, that's how we absorb force. We need the arch of our foot to take that up. So you're doing that in skiing, that, coming back to a biomechanical principle there.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yep. So it's beyond, it's like, how does this also then help using the ski more and just the human body have a better ride? And this other, like, you'll be the most amazing thing I think I find is, like, all these people that would get dinged for, like, hey, you need to separate your lower body from your upper body in your turns more. Hey, you're like hip rotating, you're doing this sort of stuff. Hey, just start the turn. Don't have any pressure on your heels. Float your heels and just let this and try and turn the skis. And their legs just move. Because as soon as you're on the ground with the heel, it gets more stuck. So
another right on that,
yeah.
you tweak something, and it's going to sound like a sales pitch, but it's not. It's just excitement in what we're talking about and creating and using, and that's our function leads form. So, particularly and there's nothing wrong with form. Look at all of us. We're all, fully certified in numerous organizations, and we love that technical skiing. But if we really look at it, the lens of the learner, we really need to be developing function first and then clean it up later. And that's when the form comes in. When we get those two mixed up, we start to major in the minor and minor in the majors. So let's start with function leads form, and let's make it happen first, and then fine tune it and clean it up later. And it's kind of exactly what you articulated there. Like, how are you going to do it? You need to do something. So do that first.
Exactly. Yeah. We should, Jeff, you had your.
Well, actually, I want to go back to something, one, that we started with, and two, Tom, that you said, about this has actually been on my mind since you said it. And it's a little bit about what makes us different, and we haven't really been approaching it. What we're doing things that we believe will work and that we believe are meaningful, and we're looking for feedback on that every time we do things. And so far, so good, if I can put it that way, right? Like, it's becoming organic, and we're leading it as much as it's leading us. But Tom, like you said, you mentioned something about, and I mean, thanks for opening up on that, because you mentioned you've never really talked about it, which is that sort of I don't know, guilt of leaving the organization and doing your own thing. But it's kind of led me to this. I don't know if I can articulate this very well, but I think one of the things that does make us different is that we exist. And that's a weird thing to say, but when people have choice, they think differently, right? When they have an option to involve over here or over there or both, which is great too. It actually does put people in a place where they can make decisions that are potentially not the same decisions that they would make if there was only one option, right? And you I think what you've done with, big picture skiing, and I remember sitting, I don't know if you remember this, but sitting on a chairlift was the first place I met you. I can't remember which session we were in at Interski, but we're in Argentina and we're sitting on the chair and you pull out your camera and you start interviewing me. Like what's sort of the physical regime that I'm going through to be prepared for this, and how am I training and what have I doing? Like it was a great interview, and it was my first experience at Interski. And now I'm sitting with, this dude from Australia, and I'm being interviewed on camera and all that. But what I think is cool to see you having done is that you've brought, I'll say, an option to the marketplace. And what it does is it actually makes people think differently. It makes people be more creative. It makes people be a little bit more free with what they do. It makes them ask that kind of what if question. And so I'll bring this back around. What I actually think is a little bit different is just the fact that when there's another option, when there's another venue to go to, or there's another source of information, it has a very interesting and I think valuable interplay between those two things. It does help us question what we're doing and it helps people decide where they want to go and how they want to do it. So I actually look at what you've done actually in a very similar light to what we're doing with the PSIC. Is it's actually just providing another way for people to learn more. And I think that's a really cool thing. When we get into this whole, Mark mentioned it before, like at level 4, we want to be creative at level 4. We don't want to be refined in a way that's actually limiting to having to do it like this. And you know what? There's benefit to that too. I'm not trying to be negative about any other systems, but we're seeing some neat results by kind of going like this on the creativity scale versus like this. And so I just wanted to say that because I think I think we all feel that a little bit, right? Like when I left my previous role, I was as committed as anyone to the organization at that time. And it took a lot to do that. And I did it for some pretty specific reasons. And I'm going through that, and I've gone through that as well. But I'm finding when I'm part of something that still has meaning and it gives people options to do stuff, it's actually super exciting. And like this conversation alone, like be guaranteed I'm going out tomorrow and I'm going to be floating around, getting the toes down and the heels up, which is not what I do. Right. Anyway, it's great. Like I think it's awesome.
I hear what you're
saying. Thanks for doing
and
what you're doing as well. It's great.
Yeah, no, I hear that, and I think it takes some bravery that what you guys have done, because I mean, I know a lot of the time people just see the happy side of things, but what I've done has caused rifts in relationships. There's always, it's never smooth sailing, but to build something great and new that you really want is never easy. If it was, everyone would be doing it. To do great things, you've got to do hard things, and the harder it is, probably the greater the outcome is going to be. So I think it's awesome you guys have done that. But I mean, maybe I don't know if any of you guys want to also speak to that, because you probably have had some people just probably maybe even not want to be friends with you anymore because of a decision you've made that they can't see the full picture on. Guy, Mark, anything on that?
Yeah, I mean, part of our attitude, sort of launching into this venture, is trying to minimize any type of tension between we and any other organization. And we're not forcing anyone to do anything. We're asking people to have a look at what we're doing, and if they feel it fits in and aligns with their values and what they want out of this industry, then we're here with open arms. So from that point of view, I guess I do feel what you just described to a certain degree in Whistler. And I think there are some people who feel like there is a bit of a division there. But to the extent that we are able to dissolve that, that's really what we're here to do. So, I don't feel any animosity to anyone, depending on where they decide they want to work and which pathway they feel they want to follow. So yeah, we're just trying to do our best to try and mitigate any of that awkwardness that may otherwise potentially be inevitable. So,
Mark, any comments there?
Yeah, I think, Guy, listen, we respect all of our peers, and that means kind of locally, regionally, domestically, and internationally. We want to work with everyone. We're a professional development organization, and our open posture is for collaboration. We want to be leaders in the global space of collaborating with everyone. And just as we've done our equivalency package across the planet with all these other organizations, and really positive reception. And we're hoping that happens here too domestically, because that's our posture, and we would like nothing more than that. And when maybe the other domestic carrier views it the same way, we can make some positive steps. But in the meantime, we're open and willing, right from the word go.
Yeah, great. Well, I think it's just, I commend you for doing it, because I know it is not an easy thing to just go off and start something new if it is going against things and it causes people to, but make a choice. But as Jeff said, the freedom in choice it's very nice to have that as an option.
Mm-hmm.
We're kind of coming up to quite a bit of time here chatting. We should probably wrap it up. We can maybe keep some other things to another time, but is there, you should probably mention where people can find the PSIC on the internet and maybe social media. Let's hear that.
Okay, I guess it's me. PSIC.pro is where you can go. And if you want to get a hold of us directly and ask us any questions, info@psic.pro. And from there, it's mostly Mark manning that at the moment, and he can sort of triage the emails that come in, so you can get a hold of any of us or our teammates from there.
Fantastic. And you've got social media too.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm the least one to talk about that, but we're obviously on Facebook and Instagram. And Jeff, what's our Instagram handle? If you look up Professional Ski Instructors of Canada or PSIC, it'll come up. But
PSIC Pro.
Yeah. PSIC.pro. Yeah, or Pro.
Fantastic. Well, I've really enjoyed the conversation. It's been,
likewise.
Really interesting to hear the journey and how it's sort of unfolded so far. And like you said, you've still got some the completion stages to go, so it'll be really interesting to hear how that goes. And then probably sending PSIC certified instructors are going to be going to New Zealand and Australia this winter too, which is pretty exciting. And of course, the most enjoyable part is, as you met, we're all smiling and really intrigued when we talk about skiing. So I just want to thank Mark, Guy, and Jeff, you guys, for spending the time talking with us today.
Yeah, and likewise, to speak for all of us, thank you, Tom. It's awesome. We appreciate your time, and kind of, as Jeff said, what you've done, building a community yourself that's global and inclusive. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks,
Tom.
Very good.
Awesome.
You're such a positive force in the business right now, and as a fellow countryman, I'm proud of you, buddy.
Thanks a lot. Okay,
Thanks,
guys,
Tom.
until next time.